Now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Among the things that set college and pro sports apart is the rate at which things change. In pro sports, you have collective bargaining agreements between owners and players, and it can take a long time from point A to point B. In the NFL right now, they're talking about an 18-game regular season schedule, but it might be 5 years or more before we see that. Maybe 2030. You compare that to what we see in college sports, where things change so rapidly, it can be hard to keep up with everything that has changed, and especially been that way for the last 10 years. You think back to college football 10 years ago, it doesn't look like college football now. Not necessarily the game, but the player experience. You can go drive around the parking lot at your local college and you can see how much NIL has changed the game. Landmark court cases like Alston and O'Bannon have helped steer college athletics into uncharted waters. Terms like NIL, collectives, the transfer portal. We didn't know those terms a decade ago, and now they're driving forces in the college game. And as much as things have changed, big changes are still in store. The NCAA recently agreed to terms of a settlement in three cases that will totally reshape the landscape by this time next year. It's best known as House versus NCAA, but there's two other cases that are grouped into that settlement. Notable changes that are coming: athletes are going to share in broadcast revenues, full scholarships will be available in every sport, and we may see the end of the college walk on. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has been at the forefront of reporting on the House case, and he joins us now to discuss it. Ross, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be on.
Hey, Ross, just maybe in a word, how big of a deal is this House case in terms of how it's going to change everything? Have we lost Ross?
Hey guys,
Trey.
I'm
Hey,
here.
Ross.
You
Okay,
broke
there.
up on me right when you started
Okay,
asking the
sorry.
question.
No, you're fine. Hey, if you could describe in a word, how big of a deal is this House case to the NCAA?
Historic, that would be the word to use. It's it's the biggest change in college athletics up to this point. I think in the history of the sport, maybe going back to the creation uh, of the NCAA back at over 100 years ago. Um, you know, no, in no time during the sport were schools allowed to directly pay athletes and share revenue with athletes. And now we're seeing that right now we're getting we're this opens the door for schools to do that. So it's historic. It's a incredible change that will have a ripple effect, I'm sure, on the sport. And like every other change that we've seen, probably will have adverse impacts on some schools and conferences and be beneficial for others.
A lot of times when I'm reporting on something and it's something that's, such a stark contrast, whatever the case may be, it may be a sport, it may be a lawsuit, you know, I think you get in the moment and you don't realize just how big of a deal this is. I mean, is there any point when you've reported on this and you've been reporting on this for a long time that you just kind of sit back and think, wow, am I really reading what I think I'm reading?
Yeah, it's I think early on when and this was probably back in January or February when there were pretty intense negotiations between the NCAA and the plaintiffs' attorneys who are suing the NCAA and the power conferences. It was hard to believe that they would come to a resolution based on some of the things that the plaintiffs were asking for. It was surprising that we'd get to this point, but I think everybody in college athletics, in the power leagues, in the NCAA office, the national office, realized that you can't continue to put off uh, the revenue sharing issue. Um, if you continue to put off sharing revenue with athletes, that you're going to continuously be sued in court and lose.
Hmm.
And I think finally they realized that that was going to be the case, and you just gotta kind of bite the bullet and do it. And the fact that they finally did it is still kind of stunning when you think about it, just because they went so long with putting it off.
Hmm. The number that athletes are going to be receiving, we think it's going to be somewhere around what, 21.5 million, about 22% of the revenue that's shared with the schools. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We don't really know an exact figure, and all this will start next academic year, so it'll be the fall of 25.
Hmm.
Basically, a year from now is when I think when schools are going to be able to share revenue with athletes, and we don't know exactly the salary cap sort of number, the revenue share cap number that schools will have. It'll be the same for every school. We know that, and we know it'll probably be in the low to mid 20 millions. I think I think the NCAA has one number, and the plaintiffs have another. They'll probably compromise and meet in the middle, which is around 21, 22 million. And this is the first of a 10-year deal. The settlement is 10 years, and this is or next year will be year one. And the cap will go up every year because revenues that power conference schools receive will increase. And as revenues increase on the school side, the revenue sharing cap increases as well. There's automatic built-in increases. There's increases based on new TV type of deals that will be signed in the future. And so you'll have that whether it's 21, 22, 23 million, you'll have that rise every year. But it will. We don't exactly know what year one will be. Probably around March or April, we'll probably know the exact number. But it's going to be around in between 21 and 23 million, I would guess.
The NCAA has been going to court for years, and for a long time, it felt like they were willing to go to the mat for what they believed in. And it feels like maybe in the last couple of years, things have changed. That you see more of these type settlements. They're more willing to, what I would say, adapt to kind of modern line of thinking. How much do you think Charlie Baker taking over the NCAA has changed that, or are they just worn down by all of the legal problems that are coming at them from every direction?
Well, I think that Charlie Baker is a was a significant change in attitude and direction at the head of the NCAA. The previous NCAA presidents, um, were certainly more in the mind frame of keeping things status quo and not changing. Charlie came in as an outsider, as a former governor, former executive in the healthcare industry,
Hmm.
and I think he's kind of embraced the fact um, that the 350 Division One schools are all very different in that a segment of them, whether that's 40 or 70 or 100, need to be able to not break off completely from the NCAA, but create their own rules and be operating in a different system. And I think he realizes that. And we saw that in part of his proposal that he released in December, which is somewhat similar to what we're going to see in the revenue sharing settlement, is, the power conference schools um, making a lot of their own rules, governing themselves a little more, and sharing revenue. Everybody could share revenue, certainly across Division One, but
Hmm.
just because of how the way resources are, we're obviously going to see the power conference schools share the most, and those power conference schools were the defendants in the settlement, as well as the NCAA headquarters. The power conference schools were the main defendants in the settlement. So Charlie's mentality of kind of driving forward progress was a big part of this, as well as the conference commissioners, the power conference commissioners, Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti, Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark were all integral to the negotiations and arriving at a settlement.
reading your July 26th piece on this, one of the things that really stood out to me is that collectives are going to be uh, really affected by this. Explain how collectives are changed, and do you think maybe it levels the playing field a little bit between the schools that have a lot and maybe the ones that don't?
Yeah, I mean, the collective piece is the kind of the bottom line is that a big part of the settlement is eliminating booster involvement in NIL, and it's something that college athletic administrators have tried to do for a long time, and have mostly failed. We've seen boosters involved quite a bit, and obviously NIL opened the door for booster involvement with the collective space, and what the settlement tries to do, and the new model tries to do, is eliminate them. Basically, it encourages and incentivizes schools to bring their collective sort of in house and run everything from direct payments in house from the athletic department. Uh, I think though, because of a few things, one, Title IX, the federal law that requires schools to split everything fairly even. Because of that, because of the pot in general, I think you'll see schools try to still go outside, whether through collectives or some other entity, marketing agency, multimedia rights partner, and generate outside money, outside revenue for their athletes. And if they generate true outside revenue for their athletes through NIL deals, it doesn't count against that rev share cap.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is certainly interesting. And you asked probably the thought for many is, well, what is true NIL deals, right? And the clearinghouse, there's going to be a clearinghouse that's going to determine that,
Mm-hmm.
and a new enforcement entity that will determine all that. And it's supposed to have a lot of teeth to it. It's got the backing of this settlement and in the potential approval from the judge. Hasn't happened yet, but it is expected. And so, if the clearinghouse, if this enforcement entity does have real teeth, then they could outlaw a lot of these booster led deals that run through collectives, and that would certainly be a detriment to the survival of a lot of collectives. So it's still a big question of how much enforcement power the clearinghouse and the new entity will have. That will determine a lot of this.
Am I right that a lot of the NCAA oversight of this is taken away and it's put in the hands of the courts?
It is. That's what struck me actually about when I read the settlement was the power and authority that the not only the court has, but the plaintiffs' attorneys and the plaintiffs themselves have. Uh, they have a lot of approval power to to a lot of the rules and creation of the new model and the rev share policing the share cap. Jeffrey Kessler and Steve Berman, who are the two main lead plaintiffs, co-lead attorneys, and they have a lot of power in this. In the court as well, the court will appoint a special master to interpret rules of the settlement and to handle a lot of compliance issues. And then there will be an arbitration process that's a part of this enforcement entity. So there'll be a neutral arbitrator, not the NCAA, but a neutral arbitrator to handle a lot of the appeals process. So, for instance, the way they set up right now, kind of tying back in with your collective question, is if an athlete does a deal, with a collective or any kind of agency or any kind of booster, let's just say a local pizza joint that's owned by a booster, that deal before he takes any money would have to go through a clearinghouse and get approved. If it's not approved, the athlete is ruled ineligible, probably if he takes that deal. Um, if it is approved, he can go on and accept money. But if he isn't approved, he's ruled ineligible, and then he can appeal. And there's a court-appointed neutral arbitration process that then unfolds. So we won't have this committee, NCAA committees and committee on infractions and that sort of stuff. The NCAA may be involved in the enforcement of the ineligibility part of that, in maybe even the clearinghouse, but this arbitration process is all through a very neutral outside third party.
Ross, you and I met about 10 years ago. You were covering LSU baseball. You used to keep up with college baseball much?
Not really.
Okay.
Haven't really. Every year around May or so, I start paying attention a little bit. The
Hmm.
regionals, super regionals, and College World Series. This May, that was not the case. I was kind of embedded in the house stuff
Hmm.
most of May and June, so didn't watch a whole lot. But I miss everything about covering college baseball except the 4-hour rain delays.
Yeah, it's not so bad anymore. Now that we got the pitch clock, it makes things go by.
Uh,
You can't pitch clock the rain, but everything else seems to go by faster. You know where I'm going with this though? Baseball getting more scholarships as part of the House case, going from 11.7 to 34 scholarships. No more of this 25% for you, 35% for you. Everybody's going to get full scholarships. This to me is one of the real big deals here, and it's not just baseball; it's all equivalency sports now. All athletes on a college campus, it seems like they're going to get full rides.
Basically, yeah, it's up to the school. So a big part of obviously this roster, or a big part of the new model, is the roster scholarship structure. And it does get complicated, but the bottom line is scholarships in every sport except I believe one, women's basketball, are expanding.
Mhm.
They're really eliminating the scholarship restrictions, and they're just setting roster limits so you can scholarship your whatever up to that roster limit. So for baseball, they've had 11.7 scholarships for years now. Um, that is now eliminated, and the roster limit for baseball was set at 34. So if a school wanted to, it could offer 34 scholarships for baseball. Um, I don't expect any school to do that um, through through true scholarships, maybe through some kind of you know NIL or outside third party payments.
Mhm.
But I don't expect any school to do that. The numbers I'm hearing more in like the baseball centric conferences like the SEC and the ACC are more like on the high end is like the mid 20s of
Mm.
scholarships.
Okay.
That's basically a doubling of the current scholarship load. Uh, so because it gets expensive, and if you add scholarship, every men's scholarship that you add, because of Title IX, you need to add a women's scholarship on the other side. So you
Mhm.
have to double your additions basically. In the football scholarships went from 85 to 105. That's the new roster limited football 105. So that's 20 extra scholarships there. Again, I don't expect even in football a lot of programs to go to the 105. There will be some in the SEC and some of the Big Ten, maybe a few in the ACC that do go to the 105. But it gets very costly. It does, and there's a debate going on between administrators of adding scholarships versus rev share.
Mm.
Um, do you, like, for instance, in baseball, do you add, you know, 15 additional scholarships in baseball, or do you add 5 additional scholarships and share some revenue with the other 10 baseball players? Um, the people, I think folks are going back and forth on how to juggle that, how to handle that. Title IX is obviously a real factor there. I don't expect most schools to split their revenue share 50-50 for Title IX purposes. I do expect schools to split their scholarships 50-50 for Title IX purposes. So 50% men, 50% women when it comes to scholarships, or somewhat like that. Rev share, though, I think will be more 70-30, maybe even 80-20 in some places from what I'm hearing. In that, you would say, well, that's not even at all, right? And it's not. And I think there probably will be lawsuits at some point. But I think the thought from administrators is, number one, if you do split your revenue 50-50, you're going to have a lawsuit from the football and the men's basketball players who are generating that revenue and not getting enough of it.
Mhm.
And also number two, most of these deals, the way they're constructed, the revenue sharing deals, are a school buying the rights, exclusive or non-exclusive, of their athletes, and the rights have a value and a market value. So they're using market value, and obviously the market value is higher for football and men's basketball players, and in some cases, baseball and in women's basketball. But you look at the balance, and then the third reason why they wouldn't split it 50-50 is look at the back damages. So part of this suit we haven't discussed is the back payments for 10 years owed to former athletes, and the back payments 2.77 billion. And that money will come from the schools mostly, some of it from the NCAA headquarters, and it'll be paid back to former athletes. And the way they're paying that is about 85% to men and 15% to women athletes.
Ross, we'll leave it there. Great stuff. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports. You can follow him on Twitter. Ross Dellinger. Go to yahoosports.com to read all of his content on this House versus NCAA case. Ross, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll take a break and we'll be back in just a moment.
At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Stay on top of all Arkansas Razorback sports with a Digital Plus subscription on the Hawgs Illustrated app. Get complete Razorbacks coverage in one location. Your subscription gives you 20 plus issues of Hawgs Illustrated magazine, the most unique and compelling coverage anywhere in the state, plus total access to all the content on WholeHogSports.com, including breaking news, commentaries, analysis, features, recruiting, award-winning photos, and premium message boards. Subscriptions start at just $17 per month. Join the Hog Sports Network team at subscribe.waco.com. That's subscribe.wehco.com. Or call 479-684-5509 to get your front row seat to Arkansas Razorback sports. Go Hogs!
If you're watching us live on our Whole Hog Sports Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages, thank you and good morning. As we record this, the Arkansas football team is halfway, maybe a little over halfway through its fifth practice of the preseason. We're 24 days from kickoff between the Razorbacks and UAPB down at War Memorial in Little Rock. And Ethan Westerman's with me now. Ethan covers the football team for WholeHogSports.com. Ethan was over at practice this morning. Ethan, got any breaking news?
No breaking news today. We were there. Actually, it was the shortest amount of time that we've had yet to go watch the team. Today was the last day before turn to go into full pads tomorrow. They have a couple days in a row in full pads, and then their first scrimmage is on Thursday. So this morning was just, it was a bunch of watching position groups go through drills.
I mean, and for people to understand what a practice looks like in terms of what's open, usually it's about the first 20 minutes. Sometimes they'll expand it to 30, 35, maybe even 40, depending on the day. But I mean, what you're watching is basically you're watching quarterbacks throw the ball to each other. Maybe you throw it to a receiver. You're watching the offensive and defensive linemen on the sled. You're watching linebackers tackle a tire. You might see a little bit of what I would call live reps, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, it's a bunch of, I feel like in these fall camp practices, kind of where things get revealed the most, or whenever they turn to those scrimmages. Right now, what we're seeing, I mean, there's some stuff you can glean from watching them go through certain drills. They do a lot of one-on-ones with receivers versus defensive backs, so you can learn some stuff from that. But for the most part, these early practices are it feels like a lot of just kind of getting in the rhythm and gearing up for that scrimmage, which that's behind closed doors, so we don't really get to see that. But that's where I think they learn the most about the team is whenever they actually simulate a game like that.
The first scrimmage is Thursday. We'll hear from Sam Pittman after that. You're going to hear over the next few days from position coaches and some position players in media interviews. That'll be coming up this afternoon. You can read at wholehogsports.com. Who is today?
Today we have Deron Wilson in defensive backs. I think the
Okay.
DBs that'll be talking are Jalen Braxton, Keon Stewart, and Jaheim Singletary.
So you can check that out on our website this afternoon. I covered Bobby Petrino the first time. You did not. Uh, what have been your takeaways from seeing Bobby Petrino on the field?
Yeah, I think the word for the spring was mellow. It was just like he was very much in a teacher mode. It was I feel like reported pretty heavily just how much he was trying to just make sure that people started to grasp the offense. I mean, he brought in Ronnie Fauci, brought in Colby Smith, two guys who had worked for him before and knew the offense to kind of help out with that teaching. It seems like here in fall camp, we're starting to see it crank up a little bit more of like, we we should have some of this installed now. Let's start to execute some more. So we've seen a few little flare ups of the other day there was a receiver that didn't finish all the way through a route after he caught it, and Bobby was just like, get off the field. I mean, it's so we're seeing a little bit of those fiery moments starting to kick in. Today he was the quarterbacks were just going through some routes with receivers, and he was kind of getting on them pretty heavy today, the quarterbacks, from a few things that I saw. So it seems like, I've, like you said, I've not covered Bobby Petrino, but I'm starting to see maybe a little glimpse into what, got him such the reputation that he has.
We've got a clip to play from Scott Fountain here in just a minute, but before I get to that, one of the things that the way football works now is that you get almost all of your players in at semester in January. Freshmen, they don't go to the prom anymore. They go to college and they go through spring football. And most of your transfers are also coming out of the portal and they're going to be on campus for you in January. But, there's a few, maybe you get I think Arkansas had 2 or 3 freshmen this year that didn't go through spring. There's always the spring portal period where you can, fill some gaps. Are there any players who we didn't see in the spring who have stood out to you based on the limited amount that you've seen, or maybe who coaches have talked about?
Yeah, I think that really some of the main guys you're looking at are on the defensive side of the ball. They brought in Anthony Switzer from Utah State, who's been he was kind of just a Swiss Army knife there, could play safety, linebacker. He's been filling in at linebacker in practices. But then Larry Worth, a linebacker they got from Jacksonville State, he's been playing some DB. So those two come to mind. Steven Dix, the Marshall transfer, he's been getting some reps, and then we didn't see Monte Harrison.
Well, and that's what hey, Blake Sutton back on our controls. Let's play this clip. This is Scott Fountain, the Arkansas special teams coordinator, talking about Monte Harrison, and we'll talk about it on the other side. So you got Monte Harrison there. He's 28. He's going to be 29 this month. He's a freshman receiver, but he played 10 years of professional baseball, including a little bit of time in Major League Baseball with the Angels and with the Marlins. There's a lot of interest and intrigue about him, and you heard Fountain talking about, potentially maybe using him in a return situation.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more intriguing parts, at least to me, of going to these practices, just seeing a guy his age, you know, out there on the field with so many guys who just stepped on campus for the first time coming out of high school. It's just interesting seeing that relationship. I think I've heard him call him like uncle,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. He made a nice grab last week in a passing drill. Kind of showed off his athleticism. I mean, the guy's really athletic. I don't know what type of role he will or will not have on this team, but it is very interesting that Scott Fountain threw him in the lump of those guys that could potentially return.
Real quick, Patrick Kudus has been out. Was he back today?
No, he was not. Kind of saw a shuffling on the line today in practice. Amari Wiggins was at left guard, who he had on Saturday when we saw the team practice. He had transitioned to center, which is where he's normally been backup. But today it was at right tackle, Blackstock, right guard, Braun, center Nichols, left guard, Amari Wiggins, and then Carmona is the left tackle. So
Ethan Westerman, you can read him at wholehogsports.com. Ethan's going to stick around. He'll be with us at the end of the show. But first, we're going to go to break. When we come back, Joe Klein, the Razorback basketball great, is going to be on. We're going to talk to him a little bit about Team USA basketball, also about John Calipari. We'll be back in just a moment.
At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Get the latest breaking news on all Arkansas Razorback sports at wholehogsports.com. Our award-winning reporters and photographers go beyond game recaps to bring our subscribers the most trusted Razorbacks news anywhere. With expert analysis, the latest in recruiting, plus unique and compelling stories of your favorite teams. Subscribe today at wholehogsports.com.
Welcome back. Our show is brought to you in part by Bentonville Glass, serving its community since 1971. They're committed, professional, and versatile. Looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas? Looking for skilled craftsmanship? Choose Bentonville Glass for all your glass market needs with the highest quality products. Come by and see us at 507 South Main in Bentonville or at bentonvilleglass.com. The great Joe Klein, Slater Mo Joe, is on the line now. Joe, how's the barbecue this morning?
Oh, it's going good. Always a busy time of year, so just trying to stay on top of it.
Joe, how much have you watched of Team USA?
I've watched probably one full game and probably portions of a couple others.
I watched Sunday's game in full, and it was the first game I've seen in full. I'm kind of like you. I've watched portions of the other games. The times that they play, it's hard to catch them. It looked to
Right.
me though like Sunday, that was as good as they have looked playing together, and I would assume that that's probably expected. That now they've been together for a few weeks, and you can speak to this, but it seems like maybe there's some gelling going on.
Yeah, I think roles are getting defined. You have probably three or four guys that are going to, see a lot of minutes. I just think guys are becoming more and more comfortable with playing and not playing. I think the coaching staff's done a good job of kind of staggering some of these minutes, with Embiid and Anthony Davis and stuff because I think a lot of times it's geared to whom they're playing and to who they're playing and what their strengths or weaknesses are and how our team will adapt and match up with them. So I think they've done a nice job of kind of slowly flowing into this knockout round.
When you look at the ages of LeBron James and Kevin Durant, this is a time when players, 20 years ago had probably already called it quits, and these guys, they still look really good, at least in this international play. They've been among the two players that have stood out most to me. Just when you see them playing at this level at the ages they are, what are your thoughts?
Well, LeBron James is amazing. I mean, and I know he spends a lot of his money on his body, on his health, um, and it shows. I mean, for him to be 40 and doing what he's doing at the level he's doing it, I mean, I just I cannot think of another basketball player ever that has been able to keep the level of performance so high
Mm-hmm.
like he has for so long. I mean, that's and Durant as well. I mean, I think Durant is just more. I'm not as in tune with what he does with his body and things like that. I'm sure he has nutritionists and things like that. I think Durant is more of a unicorn, a guy that's 6'11", that basically is a two guard. And so, I think just not a lot of those around. And yeah, both those guys are just what they're doing at the stage of their careers is amazing.
You think about, and we talk about their age. LeBron's 39. Steph Curry is 36, I think. Kevin Durant is almost 36. It's probably the last go around for these guys on an international scale. They're probably not going to be playing for USA when they go to LA in 4 years, or at least it'd be a little bit of surprise. Anthony Edwards, Joel Embiid, those are some that you think of in terms of the future of USA basketball. But obviously, there's going to be a pretty good influx of new players over the next few years. What other Americans do you expect to maybe be on the stage that we're not seeing right now?
Well, there's an argument that Jalen Brown should have been on there this year. I certainly think that his time is going to be coming. Uh, you have to think that the oh young guard from New York that was having such a good year this year. I think he's a guy. Tatum will certainly be around. And there's so many good players. And now it's like the other day I was watching Canada play, and you think Murray. Forever I thought Murray was an American. I forgot that that he that he was a Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I just think there's a real good influx. Anthony Edwards is really making it known. Halliburton, uh, White. I just think there's a lot of guys that are really coming that are going to have a huge impact.
Joe, what is the Olympic experience like when you're there? You played in 1984. You were on a gold medal winning team. The last time that uh, the NBA, I think, or maybe the second to last time that the NBA players weren't allowed to play for Team USA. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, I mean, looking back, I think when you're younger and you're in the midst of it, uh, you're playing ball. I mean, you realize what a honor it is and things like that. I think as you get older, it really becomes a lot becomes more special.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember even at a young age, really, and especially at being in Los Angeles, it was so hard to make that team. I mean, the making that team was harder than playing in the Olympics. I mean, it was just a brutal trial. I think it started off with 128 players coming to Bloomington, Indiana, and it was a grind. And so I think making that team was a lot more difficult than actually playing in the Olympics. But again, it being in Los Angeles, that being having the home court, being able to experience it on, walking into the Coliseum with 110,000 people. Yeah, I mean, it's you don't realize how lucky you are until you experience something like that.
So you played in the NBA Finals. You played in the Olympics. Does it compare?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, now I don't know. Now that the American team is, but the Dream Team has become very dominant. Everybody's starting to catch up a little bit, but America's very, very dominant. So, it'll be interesting to see if this progression of other teams and other countries keeps coming. But yeah, the Olympics was again. I think at the time on both of them, when you're in the quest for it, like when you're trying to get that NBA championship ring and you're lucky enough to be a part of the Bulls. I think if you asked me that at that time you would probably say, well, that. But I think when you're able to sit back over years and look at it,
Mhm.
the magnitude of the Olympics is much greater than the magnitude of the NBA finals.
A lot of people would say the maybe the 4 or 5 best players in the NBA right now, SGA, Giannis, Joker, Doncic, are all international players. So they can throw Joel Embiid in there. He was born internationally, playing for Team USA. But it feels to me like no one has really caught up to the collection of basketball players that the United States has.
Yeah, the depth is huge, and I just think that's going to continue. But I mean, you look at the draft this year. I mean, look at the players coming. The top, the French
Hmm.
really started coming these last 2 years. I mean, they dominated the first 5 in the draft. I just I think that's going to continue because I think the game is such an international game and it's so popular. I just I don't see the American influx of talent going anywhere. I think the game is strong. I think the interest is strong. I think the coaching is good, and I don't see that changing. So it's going to kind of be interesting to see who can make a greater leap. Can the United States sustain and stay where they are and keep the gap, or can the international teams, close it? It'll be interesting to see.
You played for Bob Knight on the Olympic team. What was it like?
I think I was lucky in that I played for Coach Sutton,
Hmm.
so they were different. Coach Knight was a little more vocal, had a little bit of color to his vocabulary, and Coach Sutton was vocal, and he would tell you what you wanted and what he wanted and what he was demanding as well, but not quite to the extent of Coach Knight. But they were very similar, and they taught the exact same things. The defense was the exact same. The offense was motion and passing game. So I think Alvin and I had a real advantage um, in that we basically had been playing uh, Bobby Knight's system for 2 to 3 years.
Mm.
So I think that really helped us. But he was fair. I think that's what I liked the most about him is that he was fair. I mean, he messed up, he got on to you. It wasn't like there was a hierarchy. That he had. This is what he wanted. This is what he demanded. Uh, and he told you. He told you, praised you when you did it good, and he let you have it when you didn't. So I like that. I mean, you knew what to expect, and he was very consistent with his coaching.
Players he cut in tryouts, Joe, including Charles Barkley and John Stockton.
Yeah, like I said, man, it was brutal, and I think a lot of it. I think Coach Knight was trying to put together a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wanted to get. He didn't want to have. He wanted to have guys that could fill in and play roles and do some things that he really wanted to do, and so. Charles has admitted that he he wasn't focused on making the team.
Mm.
He was focused on making his draft stock better.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I thanked him for that numerous times. But he had guys, a lot of guys, John Stockton, Joe Dumars,
Mm.
Karl Malone. I mean, Eddie Pinkney, just all these guys that. Yeah, I mean, there were guys getting cut all the time that were, you just go down there, you look on the board when they were making cuts, and if you saw your name in the correct column,
Mm-hmm.
you were sticking around. And if you didn't see it there, you needed to go figure out how you're gonna get home. So I mean, it was definitely like I said earlier. I mean, trials were hard, boy. They
Hmm.
were very, very, very hard.
How much have you been able to talk to John Calipari since you took the job?
I talked to him a little bit. Really, we text a number of times. But as far as talking to him, I had a really good conversation with him the day before his news conference, and then the night of his news conference. And yeah, just glad he's here, man. I still can't believe it, but I'm just very glad that he's our coach. I mean, he's a home run hire, that's for sure.
It's amazing to me, Joe, how much he's changed the perception of Arkansas basketball. It wasn't like it was bad. I mean, Musselman did great things here, but Calipari's taken it to a level that I don't know that I foresaw when the job came open back in April.
Well, and to his credit, he's brought an influx of NIL. I mean,
Mm.
that's let's be truthful in that. So the money, his pot is much bigger, thanks to obviously John Tyson, but other I'm sure there's numbers of people that are helping with that. And that's the name of the game these days. I mean, that's the that's the price of the ante in poker. You better have NIL money, or it's going to be hard to stay in the game. And they've allowed him to have that, and he's shown he has a track record. He gets players, man, and that hasn't changed at Arkansas, and it will continue to be that way as long as he's there. I mean, he has a pipeline, and I think he's an incredible recruiter. I think he connects with kids and is real with them and their families, and he does right by them. You very rarely hear anybody who played for him, a player that played under him, have any kind of animosity, or he's very fair with them, very upfront with them, and tries to get them to where they want to go. And that's the name of the game.
10 seconds, Joe. We're looking at a picture of you calling a Razorback game. You going to keep doing SEC Network this year?
We'll see. I mean, I have to wait to see. I'm not like these big timers like Jimmy Dykes. They get these multi-year contracts and have all these fluffy things in their contract, cars and meals and things provided for them. I'm one of these poor, lonely year-to-year guys. So I'm waiting to hear, but hopefully I really enjoy it. Hopefully I get to do it.
All right. Well, Joe, we appreciate you being on.
You bet, guys. Have a good day.
All right. Have a good day, Joe. Joe Klein, Razorback Great. We'll be back in just a moment.
For decades of design, we're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Stay on top of all Arkansas Razorback sports with a Digital Plus subscription on the Hawgs Illustrated app. Get complete Razorbacks coverage in one location. Your subscription gives you 20 plus issues of Hawgs Illustrated magazine, the most unique and compelling coverage anywhere in the state, plus total access to all the content on WholeHogSports.com, including breaking news, commentaries, analysis, features, recruiting, award-winning photos, and premium message boards. Subscriptions start at just $17 per month. Join the Hog Sports Network team at subscribe.waco.com. That's subscribe.wehco.com. Or call 479-684-5509 to get your front row seat to Arkansas Razorback sports. Go Hogs!
Welcome back in, Ethan Westerman with me again. So you're probably watching this show and say, "I've never seen this before," at least not in this iteration of the show. We've done podcasts here at this set. We've done football podcast, basketball podcast, a baseball podcast. What we're doing now is we're going to do a live show every day, 1 hour, or every weekday, 1 hour, beginning at 10 a.m. To 11 a.m. You can watch it live on our Whole Hog Sports channels, whether that be Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. We've got a link on our site at wholehogsports.com, and you can listen on demand on our podcast on Apple Podcasts. What we want to do is what we've done today. We want to have guests. We want to talk about Razorbacks. We want to talk about the SEC. We want to talk about college sports at large. And so we appreciate you being here, and hopefully that you'll decide to be back with us day after day. We'll talk about some headlines now, Razorback headlines from the weekend. On Sunday, Ethan, the Arkansas soccer team defeated Kansas 5-1. It's the first athletic event of the new school year over at Razorback Field. It was an exhibition game. They played 3 quarters instead of 2 halves. But Arkansas, they got behind 1-0. They came back to win 5-1. You can go to wholehogsports.com right now and read Anthony Christensen's takeaways from that game. Hope you'll do that. We expect to have Colby Hale on the show at some point. Not exactly sure when, but the Razorbacks, they have 2 more scrimmages left before they open the season. They play Kansas State on Friday night up in the Little Apple of Manhattan. They come back here on Sunday, and they'll take on Seminole State Junior College over at Razorback Field. They open the season on August 15th against John Brown University here in Fayetteville. And then, of course, the big story right now outside of football practice is all the Razorbacks in Paris. And over the weekend, several Razorbacks or affiliated athletes with Arkansas, they medaled. You had Ryan Krauser, who's been a volunteer coach for the track team. He won the shot put, the gold medal for the 3rd consecutive Olympics. Lives in Farmington, kind of the pride of that community. Bob Holt was telling me a story about how Farmington threw him a big going away party, kind of this patriotic deal, which was a really cool deal for him. You had a couple of former Razorback athletes who medaled over the weekend. You had Kalen Brown in the mixed 1600 relay. Did you see? I'm sure you saw
Yeah.
the world record. What's frustrating about the way track works sometimes is that you can do so good in the prelims that maybe it takes it out of you for the finals. And I don't know if that was the case for the Americans, but Kalen Brown ran a world record, or she ran the anchor leg of a world record time in the mixed 1600 the day before the finals, and then the U.S. got run down in the final, and they ended up getting a silver medal. But she's just 19 years old, and I think it's amazing what she's done. Not only there, but what she did during the outdoor season was phenomenal to watch too.
What's crazy about that clip from the prelims when they set the world record, you originally, at least for me, I looked at this clip and I wasn't even looking at where she was on the clip. I was looking at the whole pack of people, and then I realized, 5 seconds in, that she's already almost to the finish line. I mean, they shattered that record.
Amber Anning was also on the bronze medal team for Great Britain. Pardon me, in that 1600-meter relay. Anning and Brown were part of the great 400 squad that Arkansas had this year. And then over the weekend on Saturday, there were 4 football commitments to the Razorbacks, 2 in the class of 2025, 2 in the class of 26. These have boosted their recruiting rankings quite a bit from what I've seen on the different recruiting sites. Cameron Suttles was one of the players. He's a running back from Little Rock Parkview. I've been sitting here thinking, when was the last time Arkansas got a running back from Little Rock? And I may be forgetting somebody that would be really easy here in the last few years. Last one I can remember, and again, I may be forgetting somebody, but I remember Wande came. This would have been 10-ish years ago from North Little Rock. But, over the years, a lot of these great Little Rock running backs have gone elsewhere. You had Michael Dyer went to Little Rock, or to Auburn. Alte Tenpenny went to Alabama. Broderick Green ended up a Razorback, but he began his career at Southern California. And I think back to some of the Arkansas teams of old, it just seemed like you always had a great running back from Little Rock, whether it be Darren McFadden, or before him you had Cedric Cobbs, or if you even want to say Central Arkansas, you had Madre Hill from Malvern. I don't know how Suttles will end up, but it was just kind of interesting that Arkansas gets a Little Rock running back.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, right now they kind of have Braylon Russell's from Hot Springs that finished his high school at Benton. He's from kind of that area. But yeah, trying to think of others who have. It's
See, that's what
hard. I mean,
happens. Braylon Russell, that's
Yeah.
an easy one right there.
yeah, TJ Hammonds comes to mind. He
Yeah,
went
that's
to
right.
Robinson, but yeah, you're right. It's not like it's been commonplace recently.
Some of Arkansas's great running backs have been from
Yeah.
Little Rock. So whenever you get one, it's just kind of notable, especially the fact that Little Rock and especially Parkview has come a long way the last few years. But there was a time there where you couldn't get any athletes from Little Rock public schools going to Division I. There was a really long drought, and it seems like that they may be coming out of that. a little bit. And I'll tell you one other thing that caught my eye over the weekend was the NFL 100. Did you see this?
Yeah, well, I heard about it. I know. I think I saw Lamar Jackson was rated the number one
He
quarterback
was.
by his peers.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
was number 2 overall. Tyreek Hill was number 1. The receiver Mahomes was number 4 after he was number 1 last year. But Frank Ragnow was not on the list, and I was just floored because I was talking to you about this as the show was going on. The way they do this is NFL Network. They began this I think July 22nd, and they ran it for about 10 weekdays until they got down to number 1. You know, you'd go 100 to 91, then 90 to 81, 60 to 51, and so on. And once they got to the top 50, I was like, wow, Frank Ragnow is going to be a top 50 player.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get to the point where it's like, he's not going to be on here. Is he?
Yeah.
No, he's not. And it's crazy to me that there's no Frank Ragnow. I wrote down some numbers from him just to kind of give you an idea of why I think this is a huge oversight, I guess, on this NFL Top 100. Ragnow was the number 1 rated center in Pro Football Focus last year, and I think a lot of people respect Pro Football Focus. It's become, the grading site for the NFL. 1 sack allowed in 670 passing attempts last year. 3.4% pressure percentage. A lot of people, now that Jason Kelsey's out of the league, will tell you that they think Frank Ragnow is the best center in the NFL. And some of them would have told you last year they thought he was better than Kelsey, who I think might end up in the Hall of Fame. But Ragnow has been that good on that Detroit defensive line. I think he's maybe Detroit's best player. Detroit had 5 players in the top 100. No Frank Ragnow. But what it really speaks to, Ethan, is the fact that I just don't think the people who voted in this, and these are players, and you got to respect players' opinions. They're voting on their peers. They just don't respect interior offensive linemen. They don't. There's no centers on this list, and there's 2 interior offensive linemen. Nobody higher than Zach Martin at
Yeah.
number 53.
What's crazy about it is center's such a position that so many of those guys on the list, you aren't going to be on the list without a good center.
No,
It's just the fact that he wasn't on
that's
there.
Jared Goff how he feels about Frank Ragnow.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the fact that it was omitted from it just goes to show like there's a little bit of, I think a disconnect with just whenever you think of who the top guys in the NFL, like, there's so many guys who do the jobs that aren't going to put them in the headlines, but without them, I mean, see how your team does.
Rankings are subjective, and I know that, but it was interesting that this came out at the same time the new Madden ratings came out. There's only 33 players rated higher than Frank Ragnow in the Madden game.
Yeah.
He's got like a 93 overall rating, and I say 33 players because I think he's tied with 2 or 3 others for number 34. He's one of the great players in the NFL right now, and the fact that he didn't make this top 100 list I thought was crazy. But I also read up a little bit on how they conduct the polls, and they basically go into different locker rooms after practice late in the season. Guys don't want to do this. They don't want to be writing down, and they only ask them for their 20 best players in the NFL. So I don't know how many of those guys are going to think about a center in the top 20. Obviously not very many because the center didn't make the list.
Yeah. All I know is it was a snub. It was a snub. However it was conducted and they came up with it. Frank Ragnow should have been on that list.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to start the change.org.
Yeah, Frank Ragnow, we think he's one of the top 100 players in the NFL, no doubt about it. Arkansas did get 1 former player on the list. Dre Greenlaw, the linebacker from San Francisco, was number 57 on this year's list. So congratulations to Dre. It'll be interesting to see if he gets to play this year after that Achilles injury that he suffered in the Super Bowl. Best of luck to him as he recovers from that. Well, we appreciate you being with us today. Certainly, we're looking forward to doing this every day. Back in the back today, Blake Sutton, Spencer Tyree, Anthony Christensen helping out in the control room. And we'll do this again tomorrow. We've got Mark Etheridge from D1Baseball.com scheduled to stop by. He'll talk about the SEC offseason and obviously how teams came through the draft, coaching changes, and we'll certainly talk a lot of Razorback baseball with him. We look forward to that, and we'll see you again tomorrow.